We talk to hundreds and thousands of folks at this point who are psychedelic curious, and so commonly folks are sharing about, well, I want to learn how to let go. I want to learn how to move on from this or how to heal from this. And I think that surrendering and letting go are related, but they're slightly different concepts. And I'll back up one further to say that to build a good foundation of this topic, I think we first need to have a conversation about two of my favorite things: conversations about power and control, and then probably a little bit of a conversation around narratives and stories, which you all have heard me chat about if you've tuned into some of our episodes in the past. And so just to briefly provide some primer or background here, I believe that hidden within this concept of letting go is this dynamic about power and control. And what I mean by that is that it can come in a couple of different formats. One is that obviously many folks explore psychedelics as a way to navigate and process trauma. And very often we have folks who are deeply affected by their trauma, regardless of whether it was in their recent past or further into their past, whether in their childhood or their early teens or whatnot. And oftentimes people describe that these events or people or sources of trauma end up affecting our lives, and usually unprocessed trauma will affect our lives in a negative way. And so what I mean by having a conversation about power and control is that these things hold some type of power over us. Because this thing happened, it has shaped the way that I navigate and experience my life. And so when folks are talking about letting go, I also think that they're really talking about how to reclaim your power. But there's always some type of a power system or a structure within our beings, right? As a part of that, I think that there are parts of us or our life experience that have certain elements of control, meaning we have a say or we get to call the shots as far as our emotions and our experience. I think the other part of this is that control is this interesting part of our human experience. I think that there's some philosophy that says that we aren't really in control of anything. We can have great plans, we can have expectations, we can make predictions, but truthfully, we're not in control of what might happen. The LA wildfires being a pretty powerful example. I'm sure that there are some things that could have helped with our response to the fire. And largely, there were probably a lot of factors and elements outside of our control. I can say the same thing with Hurricane Helene. I can say the same thing with extreme weather events. And you could insert the blank on the number of things that are out of our control. Being in a seat of not knowing what's going on, being in the seat of the unknown, and knowing that not everything in life can be controlled can be deeply terrifying, deeply, deeply terrifying. And so one of the ways that we try to, let's say, reclaim our power is to have control over these things. And I think that I probably don't have enough time or hours to really dissect this, because this is an intersection of like philosophy work, mindfulness work, mental health, and like therapeutic work. But what I'm saying is that any time that you are wanting to confront things that have held some type of a grip on your life, you're likely also coming across different elements of power and control, where people often kind of describe it as, man, I wish I could be freed. I wish I could let go from this thing. But no matter how much I try to let go, I'm still attached to it or connected to it, or I'm still having some type of an effect on my life experience, from it. And again, totally normal. You are a human who is trying to not only survive, but trying to cope, and not only cope, but maybe trying to live a fulfilling life in accordance to your principles and values and perspective, right? And so it's natural that if something was negatively affecting you or something that you were carrying for so long, it's natural to want to let go of that. And it's natural for it to be really, really hard to do because we as humans learn to adapt our life experience based on what has happened to us in the past, right? You burn yourself on the stove, you're reminded, okay, that's hot. Now in the future, I'm going to learn to not burn my hand on the stove. And so I think that the other, part of this is also the narratives and the stories, because power and control also interplay with narratives and stories. And it's very similar to what people share about like neuroplasticity processes, where when we have the same narratives and stories reinforced into our lives over time, then those things become the routes in which our brain thinks, or we apply our life experience in accordance to those narratives and stories. What I mean here is that when we're talking about power and control or letting go of experiences, oftentimes folks are like, I've tried everything and I just can't seem to shake this thing that I'm working through. And that might mean that I'm broken, or that might mean that I'm helpless, or that might mean that there's no hope for me. Or some folks might say, I am so messed up beyond redemption that no matter how hard I try, no matter how much therapy I do, no matter how many, medications I'm on, I can't seem to fix or affect this, right? And so what I share here is that the mind, this is what I tell my clients all the time. The mind is so powerful that it can actually convince you in and out of a lot of things. And you would be surprised how much of our own agency and sovereignty and power that we give away because of some narrative or story that has been running and dictating and holding power over our lives for many, many, many years and decades.